You record.
I've had a lot of thoughts this morning.
Yes.
Oh, I'm outside in the park. I'm babysitting a baby sleeping here next to me. So I have a moment. I'm glad I can join. It just is so, I don't even know really where to begin, but I find these teachings are really making a difference. And something that's been brewing, I think, for the last couple of weeks is this feeling of how important the awareness is and how much there's a lacking awareness of what, especially you made it so clear last week with using the Myers-Briggs. Even though I'm not like I've done the test or whatever, I'm not crazy familiar with the test, but I just think it's such a great way to illustrate how we're so different, and that it's very typical right now, I think, that we can't really seem to appreciate the differences between people, but like how everybody brings so much value from being different. But it's it seems like so many people can't accept other people's differences, or like it's just becoming more and more apparent to me how valuable it is that we are so different and we're all bringing something different to the table, and how the awareness of that, it can strengthen us so much in all situations. And I just thought it was such a great way to illustrate it, and it's become more and more clear. A few weeks ago, I did this experience with a Native American chief and spending a night in a teepee, and the way that he was also there was this guy that was stoned the whole time. There was this other guy that was the opposite, the most structured, present, prepared, and everyone was so different. And it was just so magical how he just said, without any judgment of anybody's habits, they said, we all have different habits, and this is just basically how it is. And when we do the ceremony, we all have to follow the ceremony, but other than that, it's like everyone's as welcome as the next one.
Yes.
And it's just becoming clearer and clearer to me how much we could more embrace the differences of everybody, and how valuable it is, and how we could build society completely different if everyone was aware of that.
Yes. Thank you ever so much, Kat. That's really beautifully framed today's lesson. Extremely insightful. I love that you said that MBTI is such a simple way to illustrate the differences, the different value, and the value in being different. And I think that one thing I love so much about such tools, and let's be honest, a shaman in a teepee, the MBTI test, the sovereign way of enlightenment, they're tools, they're ways of arranging our understanding so that we really can be our true selves, our true splendor. And that's what's beautiful in variety, isn't it, right? And so to allow ourselves access to those tools, allow ourselves to understand that none of them in and of themselves is the way to be a person, but that anybody, like he said, everyone is as welcome no matter what their habits are. If we can be the demonstrations of that, if we can not just be the demonstrations that everyone is welcome, but also the expectation that we are welcome, that's very important too, to demonstrate that we really do trust that in this situation right now, I can be exactly as I am. And I love the MBTI for that. It really does give divine permission to be different with all your weird smelliness and ways of seeing things. Thank you for that reflection. That's lovely. And it was so relevant to what I'm going to say. I really appreciate that. I open the table for any comments or on Eleanor.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but now that Kat said exactly that, I couldn't help it. So basically, for me last week, I was slightly triggered, but it was also because I was in a situation with some relatives that are a different type than me, the opposite type, basically. So I was like, oh, they are so stupid, you know. And then for the past few days, I've been taking part of a coaching training, and my reflection today was that when you look at it from you look at somebody's strength and what they are good at, it's so easy to like people because you can like them on their own terms. And and it was so funny because there was this one guy I was coaching, and he was so similar to this relative that I was so triggered by last week. And I was like, oh, but he's such a lovely guy. And so on.
How could it be?
Yeah, exactly. But then also, I mean, so yeah, that was really a nice feeling. But also another thought that has come to me is also that, well, nothing is right or wrong, and we all get to be who we are. But also, who is in charge of who's in the leader positions is going to affect how the totality of our societies work. So what I would suggest would be that the ESTJ person, who has been kind of in charge for a long time, perhaps they should kind of let the rest of us take the lead now to see what's in the systems that we are finding ourselves in is a bit dysfunctional, so that the others can see something else, you know?
Yes.
I think that's a bit in relation to capitalism and so on, that it's actually, it's not like they are wrong, but maybe they are not supposed to be the leaders anymore.
Yes.
In our current situations.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And in a changing environment, like in the dragonfly story that we all know, as the environment changes, we must change in order to adapt to a changing environment. If we hold on to old ways of being, then for all the diversity in the world, or for all the unity in the world, we're just not going to survive. So what we'll see is, this is my understanding, what we'll see is as these energies continue to intensify, or as the world continues to ascend in its knowing of itself, whatever languaging you want to use, as this continues, leadership must evolve and will evolve. It'll happen quite naturally as ESTJs find they don't want to step into those roles anymore, because that's not where they find their purpose. That's not where their function is anymore naturally. And the natural agency usually does tend to overrule all of our human will. Even though we hold on kicking and screaming, it does in the end tend to be nature that wins. So I agree with you entirely. Those who are in leadership have the accountability to demonstrate what their knowing is as they mature. And that means that we are the thought leaders. We are the ones who are pulling for, pushing for, championing for change, speaking on behalf of love, speaking on behalf of truth, which means that we need to be the ones also to demonstrate that we know what that is. And so we find ourselves moving into leadership. Again, framing love beautifully what's coming up in the class. Let me just double check if Kelly's here. Thank you very much for Eleanor. That's insightful. Shall I start? Maria, Sylvia, Sarah, any contemplations on life? Then let me begin. So we're going to talk about being Peacock. Did you love the picture I sent? Did you love the picture of the peacock flying in front of that sunsetty sky? Looked a bit like flames in the background. Let me tell you, last week we talked about peacock in relation to the three chakras, the throat, the third eye, and the crown, of course, that being blue and indigo and purple, the colors of peacock. And we talked about how the peacock represents transformation. It represents the renewal, the resurrection. And I challenge any of you to think of the word resurrection in any other vibration than one that exudes splendor, one that exudes light and renewal. We don't think of resurrection as the zombies are resurrecting. Although often in times in life, in business or whatever, that's how we treat a resurrection. We say, right, I've upgraded. I'm going to know myself anew. I'm going to step out into my power, into my magic. I'm going to be all full blown myself. But then we act like zombies And we go, oh, here I go, groaning into action, not really telling people who I truly am, not really, really shining my true splendor. Well, ladies, let me tell you, it is time to be splendid. And that's because of the very things that Kat and Eleanor brought up, that it is necessary for us to show the meaning of diversity, the true meaning of difference, the true meaning of value, of the essence of love, spun in the magical way that is our uniqueness. And that's what our splendor is. It needn't be bombastic. It needn't be rough. It needn't be, oh, let's go out and be and tear some shit down, although why not, you know, if that's where you're called into. It can be simple. It can be plain. It can be absolutely nothing at all. But the point is that it's natural. The point is that it's natural. That's what the splendor is. And you've seen the sweetest little, tiny little snail on your child's thumb when he's found a little snail, or you've seen the cute little smudge of dirt on their cheek, or the smile wrinkles in the corners of your loved one's eyes, and you know that that's also splendor. So you understand splendor as being a very natural expression. The world needs hope more than anything at all. It needs to be reminded of love. It needs to see the evidence of sparkle and magic. And that's what we give them with our splendor. So you're a demonstration, you're proof. You are the proof. Do you understand how important that is? Beauty is an expression of the divine, you see. We all know that it's not the circumstance, it's not it's not the makeup, it's not the face. We all understand that beauty is what's on the inside. There's no denying that anymore. There's no pretending like we don't understand what beauty really is. So it's an outpouring. You understand that your beauty, your elegance, your splendor is an outpouring. And that allowance of that energetic flow, when you don't resist it any which way at all, it brings excellence to our handiwork. It brings brilliance to our smile. It brings healing to our touch. And it brings magic to our cooking. I am an amazing cook these days. Excellence is also splendid, just like beauty. Think of it as an outpouring. It's the excellence of divine creative power allowed to move very, very naturally. And there are many reasons why we restrict it, right? And these are the personal points of consciousness that you and I heal in our own inner work as we go along in our ascension. And we do it over and over again. We understand it's not like an end game. We finish with all our shadow work and now we're done. We know that. But we do know that as we go along in life, we pick up these little touch points, these little points in consciousness that cause us to restrict our expression. That's fine. That's exactly fine. We talked about this before. This is how a flutist will limit the flow of breath in order to make music. But you do need to know when to stop this limitation and when to start this limitation. Do you understand that? That's how your magic really becomes magic. So when we talk about expressing naturally, it doesn't necessarily mean that beauty and splendor means being all of the everything all of the time. It doesn't mean that you're going to force people to drink out of the fire hose. It doesn't mean that. It means that we are understanding that where we are restricting an outpouring, that is a structure, a limitation, and we are aware of it in our sovereign mind. That's what makes us sovereign. That's what gives us mastery to choose. So out of all of these personal points of consciousness that help to restrict some of this flow, and I'll list some of them are paradigms, some of them are fears, some of them are preferences, as Eleanor said, some of them are habits, some of them are errors, some of them are just a mistake I made. I thought this thing and it's not true. It's not all, doesn't all have to be dramatic. It doesn't all have to be the dramatic, hideous, awful thing from the past. Sometimes it really is just compounded error, easy to fix. But the one little specific reason that we use to restrict our splendor that I want to talk about today, so that we can know it differently and therefore release it because it isn't useful ever, is the fear of being seen. And darling, with those feathers of yours, let that not be the reason that anyone is prevented from seeing your splendor. You deserve to be seen. And frankly, the world needs to see you for all those reasons I said before, because they need to know that it's safe to let go of the structures that make them judge, that make them discriminate, that make them believe false things about what's possible and what's safe. They need your demonstration and your splendor to give them permission to be unique. Yes? Fear of being seen. The resolution of which, of course, liberates you to be Peacock. And I'll explain some of the energetics later. You do already know them, but just need a little reminding sometimes. So a story then to frame it. Who wants a story? We have Europeans on the call there. It's almost bedtime for them. Us Americans don't really need to go to sleep, but we will take a story anyway, won't we, ladies? As I was sitting outside earlier, talking to my husband about being Peacock. I know this is how I start most of my classes. I realized this story that's etched into my skin. Have you ever seen, have you seen Moana? Hands up if you've seen Moana. And you know Maui, who has his tattoos on his body, and they evolve as he evolves, right? Well, if any of you have tattoos, then you'll probably say something similar, right? I certainly have the same sort of thing going on my skin. First, when I was 18, a little tiny sunflower appeared on my right shoulder. And that was my statement of independence. I will be a sunflower. And the reason I like sunflowers is because they're very, 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 very powerful and very majestic, but they're still beautiful. And they yield abundantly with seeds. And so I thought that was very fitting for me, you see. So I popped that little tiny sunflower on my shoulder. And a little bit later, about a year or two later, I became very, very sick in the soul, very sick in the spirit. This is during my university years. And many, many dark stories from that time, and traumas and all of the stuff, all of the bits of the stuff from that time. And I ended up getting another tattoo, right? During this time, I was like, I'm going to get another tattoo, right? This is the perfect time for it, right? When I feel like shit all the time. This is something I remember forever. So I put on, I get this tattoo next to my sweet little sunflower that represents magnificence, right? And it's a daisy. But I get it done by this tattoo artist called Grog. That was his name. And he lived in this like filthy back alley in this small industrial town in England. And I was as diseased in my soul at the time. And this tattoo done by Grog in goodness knows what level of filth became really diseased also. And it was infected. It wouldn't heal properly. And even to this day, it's 3D. You know, the scar tissue is so thick over it that you can actually feel the outline of this old disease. But it healed in time. It healed in time, and it became a bigger bunch of flowers. When I moved to America and things got better and I had my children, over time these flowers grew and grew, and they sort of cascade down my back, emerging from a peacock feather on my arm. Let me show you. I'm going to show. Oh, look how lovely. Oh, how pretty it is. How nice. But before the design was finished, I got pregnant with Penelope. And you can't tattoo when you're pregnant, so it remained unfinished. And when Penelope was born, that's when our odyssey began. So that's when life took us up and out of the real world, and we learned that crazy lesson about grace in Colorado. And so that means that tattoos were never on the agenda, right? That was never something that we were fitting into our priority list, was getting these tattoos finished. So they just remained unfinished. And to this day, I have an unfinished peacock feather. So I have open bits here that are unfinished and no color here. And the middle of the peacock feather is unfinished. But here's the thing. The rest of the tattoo is gorgeous. Everyone says so. My husband loves it. I live on the beach, so people see it all the time, and I get all the compliments. But the only bit that I can see is the unfinished bit. I can't see any of the other stuff. It's not in my consciousness. When they comment on my tattoo, I conjure up my knowing of my tattoo. And my knowing of my tattoo is unfinished business. Do you understand that? That's not what they're looking at. Think about this in your life. What they can see is completely outside of my awareness, as long as I am maintaining my framework of awareness. Empathy is not your feeling what other people are feeling or taking on other people's junk. Empathy is your ability to expand your framework of awareness so you can take in other perspectives and understand them. That's empathy. And I can't empathize with someone's compliments, right? Or someone's recognition or reflection or validation or encouragement or yes, peacock, shine. If my understanding of what they're looking at is unfinished business. Now, I think that this is the root cause of why we hold ourselves back. Okay, framework, let's go back to Splendor. Let's go back to the peacock, holding ourselves back from demonstrating that shine is because we're keeping our attention fixed on the structures that aren't yet like the highest we can reach in consciousness. And we know that those structures aren't Christ. We're using that word to signify knowing of truth. So when we look at our unfinished business, or when we keep our framework of reference on that which isn't good enough in us, in our service, in our relationship, or whatever it might be, we don't allow it. We don't allow the flow as much. Let's look at the logic, though. Let's look at the logic here. We can all empathize with that. We understand that. That's basic self-love teachings, right? But let's look at the logic. We know what it's like to be afraid of being seen. We are blaming the patriarchy or past life witch burnings or discrimination, and with very good cause. Yes, because these things have given us cause to fear. But the mechanics, the mechanisms, right, the workings of, the energetic workings of ascension is what we're really interested in here. So while we rearrange the things in the physical world, the things that do compound this fear, the things that, as Eleanor brought up, we do need to look at, to alter, to help shift. We do need to see these and recognize these things. But in, oops. Love it. Sorry about that, guys. Zoom just popped up with a thing right in front of the whatnot. Thank you very much, Zoom, for giving me information I didn't have at this moment in time. We will be able to dissolve the structures that prevent a full outpouring of splendor when we lean into those things in splendor. So although we must look at the things that compound our fears, that affirm our fears and validate them, we must change those things. In order to fully understand the mechanics of ascension, we must look at consciousness. Now, we are afraid of being seen because we believe there is a consequence of being seen, and the consequence is what we don't want. Do you understand that? That's logic. We are only afraid of being seen because we don't want the consequence that we believe will come as a result of being seen. We understand that? So it's not the being seen we're really afraid of, it's the consequence of being seen. And more logic says that ergo, this indicates that we believe that there is something not to be seen. Do you understand that? So that means that we are here in this scenario concerned about the unfinished business that whispers like guilt in the night. I have been afraid to ruffle my feathers, ladies, I confess. I have believed that the unfinished business matters one whit to divine creative power. And I have shrunk down and into myself, and I have lied to the world and to me and to those I love so that I could stay safe. I've used excuses, I've used rationalization, and I've pointed to all the good reasons why I should shrink down and stay safe. And I've done it in a clever way that doesn't reveal how afraid I really am of being seen. I confess. But I'm not anymore, of course. It's an easy fix when you know how. And the ripple effect from that, the ripple effect of benefit is unimaginable. I have a little personal success story from today. Now, today, Sylvia and I had an email from the administrators of one of the tools that we use. I haven't checked with her if I can tell this story. Can I tell the story? Thumbs, yes, good. Okay, good. I'm not revealing any hidden unfinished business here. So we get this email from the administrators of one of the tools, right? You've got a business, you've got different bits and bobs, mechanics that fit together. And one of the little lug nuts in this mechanism, in this business mechanism, says they've chosen to classify our service as pseudoscience. So they're not going to let us use their widget anymore. Now, my first reaction is fight or flight. Shit, fuck, shit. Oh, it's 3:33. That's my first reaction is, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We have to, I don't know, hide maybe or reclassify. I don't know exactly what we have to do, but something's going to have to. For a split second, I recognize that reaction. It takes maybe a nanosecond, but I am aware enough that I observe it. And I see, here is a fight or flight reaction. Now, in the past, this would have silenced me. A doubter. Here is someone who is doubting the validity of what I'm saying, doubting my integrity as a result of that, and calling me deceitful as a result of that. And all of these things are terribly, terribly, terribly frightening. And so, does anyone else get triggered by doubters? Does anyone know what that feels like? A few, everyone, 100%. 100% of us get triggered by those who would place doubt on what we know is true. Is that surprising? No, of course it's not surprising. That's a sign of your love, darling. The fact that you get triggered when someone puts question on your integrity, that's a sign of your love and your devotion to God and your devotion to your authentic truth, your devotion to your splendor. That's what that trigger means. You're allowed to take whatever reaction you would like from that. But you must know the craft of weighing things in values of love and therefore choosing a state of mind, yes, choosing a state of mind that will allow you loving response. That's all this is. That's what vibrational ontology is. It's not even a complicated issue. It's the easiest thing in the world when you know how to alter your state of being and move back into sovereign poise, regardless of what that trigger is. The moment you choose your state of mind, this pseudoscience accusation that would have destroyed me for at least a few hours is not even a thing. A quick phone call and the appropriate administrative steps are taken. That's the result of grace. There's this lovely quote, I can't remember who said it now, but he says, oh gosh, how does it go? The young man is always surprised when he goes up to the big bully and yanks him by the beard, only to find out that it comes off in his hand and was only tied on to scare the timid adventurers. I love that quote because it's true. When we lean into these things that we fear, the reasons why we think we have cause to fear being seen, to fear stepping out in our splendor, the moment we lean into those things, we find that they have no power. Let me make it absolutely clear what vibrational ontology is. It is the art and craft of changing your state of mind to more love. If you can do this instantly in a moment of trigger, then you will find your beauty, your excellence, and your splendor isn't diminished for more than a nanosecond, if even that. If you want to call it tuning into different frequencies, you can call it that. If that languaging freaks you out and you think it's pseudoscience or woo-woo, then you can say mindset change if you like. It's not woo-woo, it's divine human mind. You need to know how easy this is. I'm talking to the man in his brown suit. That's how I imagine him right now, right? With his gray beard, and he's probably got a briefcase or something like that, right? That's who I'm talking to right now. It is divine human mind. And you need to know how easy this is, because this is your time. This is your time to be free. And you mustn't let any subconscious paradigm about your ability to shine or your validity of shine hold you back. Look, everybody knows that you can change your experience with a shift in perspective. And who would deny that that is what triggers a quantum leap? That is called revelation. These are aha moments, right? Changing the way that we choose. There's no magic involved here. Well, apart from the remarkable expression of life that you are, of course, look at you. Look at you now, ladies. I'm speaking to the gentlemen and I'm speaking to you ladies in the room. Look for a moment at your splendor. Ruffle your feathers a little bit. What a marvel you are. What a beautiful marvel. Did you know, have you ever tried looking up into the sky, into the blue sky, and seeing all the little white dots whooshing about on the sky. Have any of you, do you know what I'm speaking of? It's a particular phenomenon. When you look up in the blue sky, you will see little white dots whooshing around. Try it and you'll see them. Now, the esoteric explanation I've heard for this is that these are the results of our brains cognizing one-dimensionality. So in other words, in consciousness, they are the stitches of manifestation. See if you can understand that in quantum terms. The stitches of manifestation, the one-dimensionality of infinite potential quantum poise, okay? Big concept, but actually quite easy to understand when we think of creation moving through a quantum veil into becoming. Do you understand? So of the 3 dimensions, of the 4 dimensions that we're familiar with, that we live in, one-dimensionality is the first stitch of creative manifest form. So in other words, spirit. Now, the scientific explanation that I've heard for these white little dots is that these are blood cells moving in the capillaries over the retina of the eye, and they don't absorb blue light like the red blood cells do. And that means that that creates a gap in the blood column whooshing along the capillaries, and it appears as elongated white whizzing lines. So when you look up next in the blue sky, look up and notice these lines and pay attention to them and understand them, whether they are one-dimensional stitches in quantum or whether they are your white blood cells, the angels of your being. It doesn't matter. You will notice that as you watch them, you can see them change their behavior. You can spend hours observing how they react to different states of mind. Perhaps it's your pulse changing, perhaps it's a body chemistry changing. Either way, a cellular response to what you're observing and the narrative that you're allowing about how you are observing. Isn't it a marvel? Test it if you like. It does take practice. So, magic isn't real indeed. To the doubters, I say, sir, I challenge you to a feather ruffle, and I guarantee I know who's going to win. Listen, ladies, we are now going to dial up our splendor. We will not allow ourselves to be silenced by labeling or fear-mongering, whether that's coming from the outside or whether it's coming from within. Because frankly, we have no need anymore to let these false notes disrupt the harmony of what we are offering to the world. Do you understand that? So listen to this: splendor, magnificence, excellence, beauty. They have a divine purpose, energetically speaking, as a part of human expression. These qualities, splendor, magnificence, excellence, and beauty, they serve the purpose of outreach. Look at the peacock. He isn't ashamed of the glory that God bestowed on him. It's just his natural way of reflecting light so that it can be perceived by a viewer. In one scenario, the viewer is a female who's perceiving a show worthy of mating for. Have you ever perceived a show worthy of mating for? Most of you, I think all. I think maybe all of you have let a peacock marvel you into a mating ritual. And another scenario is a male peacock who perceives a peer and then chooses how to relate to him based on the show of splendor. And in another scenario, a wonderful woman in Sarasota walking down her neighborhood sees the peacock and considers it a little piece of heaven. That's me, by the way. So the peacock isn't controlling any perceptions. He isn't choosing either who gets to perceive. He is only expressing naturally. Now, a few of the mechanics of natural expression. I'm going to remind you of the river thought experiment. So sit carefully and gently and full of mind and full of love. And become as comfortable as you can. Shift into a better posture, if you must. Think of alignment. Think of natural flow. Think of your chakras. Think of your blood flow. Think of the electricity whizzing along the nerves and down the spine. And imagine as smooth a ride as possible for every piece of the puzzle that you are. A meadow as diverse as anything. Millions and millions of ways of expressing beauty comes through you every single day. And a tiny little amount of it is prohibited by something. But most of it is absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely darling. It is so beautiful who you are and how you move in the world. The way you know the truth. The way you hold that in your heart and in your mind, no matter. The way you smile. The way you move your fingers when you hum and you're not thinking about it. The way you respond immediately, intuitively, lovingly when you have the chance. It is so lovely. Let's imagine that you're standing in this river. And let's imagine that you know that this river is the flow of infinite life force. And you know where it's come from, even though its origin is a mystery in your mind. You do know that this comes from the one source of all loving, benevolent creativity. And it moves through you. And in fact, it is you because you meld with this water and you find yourself becoming merged with divine mind, loving flow. And let's imagine then that in this state of merging, of loving flow, this is sovereign poise. This is your participation with that creativity that is always moving through you. And let's imagine that sovereign poise flows along the river and into 3 consecutive pools that are joined together with little waterfalls so that they are tiered, with the first pool being at the top and leading into the second pool, which leads into the next pool, which flows out into life and into creation. And as you flow into the first pool, reminding yourself once again that you're merging with the water means that your divine mind, your conscious mind, is the very life force and the very power of intention that alchemizes all structure, that changes the vibration of all things. And let's notice that in the first pool, we shall call it consciousness. We shall call it mind space. This is the the diamond consciousness in the model of human consciousness that we recognize. We understand that this is where we keep our paradigms. This is where we keep our fear of being seen. And we know that in the mouth of the waterfall, where this pool falls tenderly into the second, we know that here we have placed some barricades. We have placed a few beliefs right here, ones that correspond to the fear of being seen. Perhaps they are fear of being seen because it will lead to ridicule, or perhaps because it will lead to rejection, or perhaps because it will lead to alienation, or perhaps it will deny my belonging. I don't know exactly what it is, and I don't need to know per se. But what I do need to do is understand where is the water and where are the barricades. What are those structures? What do they feel like? And where do they sit in relation to the flow? When I discern this, all I need to do is allow my knowing to glide over them, and the love, the Christ, the grace that is embedded in pure I am presence consciousness will alchemize those structures, because that is how it works. And this increases the flow. So your conscious awareness will shift these things out of the way, because when you look at them, you will illuminate the fact that they don't matter one whit to creative power. And down they go, whoosh, they go into the second pool. Now, the second pool is your energy field. It always goes consciousness, energy, manifestation. And so the second pool is your energy field. And here we find the blockages at the mouth of the waterfall, where the water, the creative power of mind, creative life force of your divine human knowing. Here the blockages are stagnant emotions, are unprocessed emotions, are blockages or formations of energetic nature, unbalanced chakras, meridians that aren't opened, grief that has been denied. Whatever it may be for you, it stagnates and coagulates there at the mouth of the pool and prevents the flow from trickling out, from really whooshing out into the third pool, which is manifest life. So standing here in the second pool, you simply allow your consciousness to glide over those things that stagnate and coagulate at the entrance to the third pool. Glide over those emotions, over those unprocessed feelings. Sometimes we deny feelings because we're afraid that they will alter our vibrational point of attraction and that they will form some undesirable manifestation. But that isn't how it works. Instead, what happens when you allow yourself to acknowledge these feelings or these energetics that need to move is that they move, they move, they move, they move with your alchemy. And so whoosh, we open up that waterfall that connects the second pool, your energy field, with the third pool, your manifest life. Here we see that the things that block the expression of our splendor, the expression of our authentic beauty and sparkle, are the circumstances that we lay out for ourselves and that we allow to trigger us. This is the letter from the administrative what's-it and the doodah, who triggers me into thinking that I'm unfinished business. These are the comments from the people we're in relationship with, or the circumstances that align in response to these beliefs we've had. And all we need to do is lean into those circumstances, is touch them lovingly with the creative spirit, is touch them with the essence of our soul. In other words, it is to allow that river to flow into them, and with your love and your awareness, let them dissolve. Let them be no more powerful than you. The mechanics are always these. When it comes to dialing up your splendor, to tuning up your beauty, and to being the real, authentic expression of diversity, of what God looks like through you in a fashion never seen before or ever again. This is what the world needs from you, my love. The steps to take. It is time now for you to assume the role of Peacock. It is time for you to settle into divine permission for yourself to be Peacock, to express that which you know is true, to love fiercely, liberally, beautifully, mindfully, meaningfully, and productively, an expression of your devotion. That's what your splendor is. The three mechanics in this change, in this shift, you know them. They are the 3 steps in I Am Truth. Step 1, remember, I am the flow. I am the river. I am allowed to flow. In fact, I am supposed to flow. That's how I'm made. Step 2, recognize what is water and what is obstruction. Discern the difference. Bring into your awareness the barricades in consciousness, the barricades in your energy field, the barricades in your manifest life, and recognize them. Step 3, release. Alchemize the obstruction using vibrational ontology. Know it differently. Know it lovingly. And you will find that it begins to move. With your attention really, really peaked, just as if you're spotting the trillions of minuscule white dots on the canvas of your imaginative mind. Notice the tingling of spirit in you. This is the creative flow, the splendor, the glory of God that is coming through you. And sink into the feeling of it. Mm. Mm. Bask in it. Have as much of it as you like. There's an infinite amount. Share as much of it as you like. You'll never go without. There's an infinite amount. And ruffle your feathers a little bit. Your feeling of delight, your acknowledgement of the sparkle is how you ruffle your feathers. It's how you say, yes, this is good. It is safe for me to splendor myself. It is safe for me to show my love. It's safe for me to smile at strangers. It's safe for me to answer the call. It's safe for me to speak to the ones I fear and to forgive the ones I haven't. Because the power of my peacock splendor far surpasses any obstruction in the universe. Because I am that I am. Ladies, my loves, this week your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to be splendid. Whatever that means, however that comes through you, be splendid and prove that it's safe to be love. We have a really exciting program coming up called Master Alchemist, and you're all invited. Master Alchemist is one of the masteries in the sovereign way of enlightenment. It's an immersion in the process of energy work. It's a format, a protocol for you to follow in mind for some very, very specific results, very specific, pointed intentions for you to follow, so you have the greatest benevolent impact with your energy work. This is very good if you're a healer, or if you're a conscious manifester, or if you're someone who, for another reason, has something that needs to be done. This is a wonderful program, and it's called Master Alchemist. So you'll receive an email or a notification about that in due time. I do recommend that you've been through I Am Truth at least once before you do the Master Alchemy Protocol. And if you need a refresher, then let us know, and we'll help you with that as well. So that is it, my loves. There's going to be maybe some comments, maybe some thought experiments in the group this week, just to help the embodiment of the teaching on splendor, on being splendor, and what some of the mechanics are, and to help bring your attention to some of the things that we talked about today in the class. So keep an eye out for that. And that's it for me, from me today. Does anybody have any questions? Maria says, I just held a 5-week program named Dare to Shine. Dare to shine. It's been a wonderful journey. Yes, Maria, I heard about that. I heard that was great. I saw some really wonderful feedback on that. Well done. Well done and good for you. This is a very important message. And Sylvia says, yes, not judging people for being different, but judging difference as difference. Yes, to see difference as difference. That's as complicated as it needs to be. That's the end of the argument, really. Good point. And if there are no other questions tonight, then, ladies, then be gone with you. Take your feathers and go out there and bless the world with your presence. I love you very, very much. You know how to get in touch with us if you need to. Good night. Good night, everybody. Alethea, Sylvia, Kat, Sarah, Eleanor, Maria. Good night.